our brains process this basically information, music in front of us at different rates, at different speeds. So if we go faster than our processor works, it doesn't really accomplish anything. You're actually kind of practicing mistakes instead of, so slow down, slow down, slow down. I don't even care how slow it is. Go the speed that your brain can look at everything, rhythms, articulations, accidentals, whatever. Go the speed your brain can handle it. And then slowly you increase that speed. That to me is more beneficial than doing something over and over and over again, trying to get it right. You're kind of practicing it wrong. So you're reinforcing wrong instead of right. So that's the practice room technique I use personally, and I recommend for students to do too.
This episode contains adult language and adult humor.
Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults?
If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Charlie Bertini. Charlie, well, he's a man of many talents. Charlie started his professional playing career while still in the 9th grade when he formed his own dance band in upstate New York. Charlie went on to build his impressive chops playing trumpet for the Clyde Beaty-Cole Brothers circus. Charlie's a top caliber performer, a passionate educator, record producer, concert promoter, and the founder of the AppleJazz record label. And he shows no signs of slowing down. So, pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. All right, and it is time for yet another phenomenal Trumpet Gurus Hang. And this time I am joined from all the way down in sunny Florida, Mr. Charlie Bertini. So welcome to the Hang, my friend.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, man, it is great to finally meet you. I've heard so many things about you. From our mutual friend, Tyler Jaeger. And actually, I kind of hate using that term friend because he's got really bad taste in the people he hangs out with. So I love Tyler. Great. He's such a great guy and such a phenomenal player. So anyone that he says, I need to talk to, I need to talk to. So
that's great. I appreciate that. Tyler, to me, is there's a whole sort of list or army of young trumpet players that, in my estimation, are the future of trumpet. And Tyler's one of those guys. These are, and I don't mean just guys, because there's Kellen Hannes, and there are some other young folks that are just amazing trumpet players who have done all the homework and research. A lot of it's listening, but then of course practicing. And so they want to know everything about trumpet. They want to know the history. They want to know the styles. They want to know the approach. And Tyler's one of those guys. He's done his homework basically, and then he puts in the time to practice and be the kind of trumpet player that can handle different styles and different tasks. I think that's really important going forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even for us old dogs, there's a time you spend in your practice room, which absolutely is crucial. I mean, you got to shed, you got to put in the work, but I think what sometimes sets players apart is the academic research that they do into their playing. And by that, I don't mean necessarily going to school, but diving into the history, diving into all the influences that a player has, and really doing the research and getting, getting in the head of the past generations. And I think that's kind of what sets people apart when they have that understanding of what came before, do the work right now, and then use their creativity to create a new sound, become a new voice. So because you do a lot of teaching. So I mean, when you think about like this younger generation, and you have these people like the Tylers of the world who are inspired to move the trumpet world a little bit forward. What are some of the things that you, when you're looking at a student, you go, man, this is the spark. This is the person who's got the juice to do something different. I mean, what are the kind of the things that stand out in your mind?
I think those characteristics you're talking about, they're ancient. I mean, we all know when we hear somebody that's got it or see somebody that's got it, even if talking about athletes, you see some young tennis player or a young college football player, you say, oh boy, that person's going to be amazing, because right now they're 21, 22 years old. So what's in their future? But you have to have the talent to begin with in whatever it is you're doing. And the drive. And if you have those two things, then the kind of the world is your oyster if you put in the time. And just like athletics, with music, it's the same thing. There's no shortcut. You can't cram for a solo. You've got to be ready, willing, and able to do all the work. So I think we all recognize that in a young person when we hear it or see it. And so then it's a matter of that person getting the right instruction and influence to pursue their goal. A lot of it's about efficiency, like how quickly can I attain this? Well, if you don't have any direction from a good teacher or group of teachers or influencing, then it's not going to happen. And so you really need that going forward. And the trumpet players that I know that have excelled, they're hungry. They're hungry for it. And the problem is, can they get that from their band director or their college professor? If they can't, then they have to find other avenues and other ways to learn whatever it is they want to learn. As a teacher, my goal is always to inspire. I mean, I could talk about trumpet to a young player for a month and never say the same thing twice, but that's not the gig. The gig is to take that person. What do you want to do? Who do you want to sound like? Who are your influences? And what are you going to do with that? What's your goal? And then inspire them to pursue that. But they still have to do the work. You can have the greatest teacher in the world and still be a lousy trumpet player. Well, I studied with, Charlie Bertini, Bobby Shue, Wayne Bergeron, Alan Vizzuti, and not be that good. It's not about who you study with. It's about what you do with what those teachers give you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm with you 100% on that. And one of the things that you were, as you're talking about, like having direction and things like that, and that there are no shortcuts. I'm a firm believer of that. I don't think that there's shortcuts. And I always try to tell people, I can't give you a shortcut, but what I can do is I can help you to avoid detours. And that's
exactly, yeah.
So the shortest point, the shortest distance between those 2 points, sometimes, it's easy for us to get distracted. It's easy for us to get pulled in different directions. And having clarity, I think, is such an important ingredient in developing yourself in whatever endeavor it is. Being clear on what your objectives are, but then also having the flexibility to change as life throws curveballs at you. But when you're looking at the process of improving, I think one of the things that's kind of missing for many young kids are these opportunities. And we're definitely both older heads, and I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and that was still a point where there were plenty of big bands, there are touring big bands,
right?
Maynard and Woody and Buddy and all those guys were still out on the road. So there was a career path there if you wanted to do that. And this is, I want to get into some of your history on this. There were circuses, there were, touring theater acts and things like that. There were all kinds of opportunities for a brass player and a trumpet player specifically to be able to do. And, a lot of those opportunities, kind of dried up for a while. So, a lot of kids don't get that opportunity to cut their teeth and to work with older, more seasoned musicians.
Yeah, that's a key point, Jose, what you just said, to work with the older musicians, because it doesn't matter how ambitious you are and how many opportunities are out there. Like you're saying, when the bands were traveling, all the road bands, man, if you got a gig on one of those bands out of college or whatever, you learned from those older guys. You might be talented, but you don't know anything yet. And you have to sit in a section with older cats that are going, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? You know, or just maybe not even that critical, but just hearing them play going, oh man, I'm going to approach this the way so-and-so did, you know. And those are the opportunities that are gone. There's still opportunities. They've changed, but not those. Not to sit in a section with older players to learn from how they phrase, how they breathe, how they sound, how they deal with adversity, how they deal with bad chop days, and so on and so forth, and still pull it off. That's where those are the opportunities that are missing now. I think there's opportunities, but not like those.
Yeah. There's
still cruise ship bands, and there's still touring Broadway shows and stuff, although not like you said, not like there used to be, but there are opportunities out there.
Yeah. It's just finding the right ones and taking advantage of them. But yeah, and I want to talk about the circus thing, because as I had mentioned to you before we started the actual hang, you know, I spent a few summers when I was in college during circus gigs. There is something about those jobs that, yeah, it's sink or swim. If no one's ever had the opportunity to do a circus job, they are sink or swim. And I learned some of the best lessons in my playing career doing those kind of gigs and working with guys that had you know, one of the guys I worked with was a drummer who had worked with Ringling for a number of years, and you know, people that work with some of the other shows. So you know, what are some of the things that you learned out of the circus life? That's a long conversation, but I will say this,
just a little bit of history, Jose, is that when I was in ninth grade, I started a little, for lack of a better word, a little dance band. It was really a pep band, because our high school band played for the high school football games, which were on, I don't know, Friday nights or Saturday nights or something, Friday nights. But then the junior varsity football team played on Saturdays during the day. And there was no band. You know, when they'd score a touchdown, there was some parents in the audience. But, you know, the big games were Friday nights, and the whole band was this rah-rah thing. So we started a pep band to play for the JV games and cheer them on and stuff. So then we got some dance charts and stuff, Glenn Osser arrangements and so on. And then we started playing for like ice cream socials and church functions and things like that, PTA meetings. And we would get, it was like an 8 or 9 piece band, and we'd get $25, not a piece. The whole band get $25. And I was in ninth grade, 10th grade. I couldn't believe people would give me money to play the trumpet. And so we didn't split the money. We'd buy more arrangements with the money. So we had a bigger library. Well, this was in New York State. And one of the guys was a bass player, electric bass, which was new back then, because this is the early 60s. So he played Fender bass, and he was in a local dance band. So, and they were in the union, because it's a New York State, Union State. So he was in high school with us, but he was our bass player. And the union came to us, kids, and said, you guys can't use this guy because he's in the union and you're non-union. So we said, well, what if we pay him union scale? And they said, well, okay. So that whole $25 went to him. I think a 3-hour casual back then was like $19 or something. So we did that for a while, and we were getting busier. And finally the union said, no, you guys got to join the union or get a non-union bass player. So we joined the union, I think I joined the union in 1966. And now we're all getting $19 a piece for gigs. So that was a cool thing. The reason for that story is, once I was in the musicians union, I started getting the International Musician, back then was a newspaper, and it was monthly. So in there were ads for musicians wanted to travel or also would need a second trumpet player for the Navy band in Atlanta, Georgia, or whatever, And so all those ads were in there, symphony ads and stuff. There was an ad for the circus, musicians to travel with the world's largest circus, which was the Clyde Beaty-Cole Brothers circus, under canvas, not ringling, which was in buildings. So I answered that ad, and I was like first chair in high school band and everything else. And I answered the ad. I was so naive, Jose. I got hired as second trumpet in this band, and I had to report, in a few months. And I thought, second trumpet, I'm going to challenge the first trumpet player for his seat. So when I got there and we had one night rehearsal, and then we opened the next day. And it was a 3-show day the next day. And my lips were cut top and bottom because we just never stopped playing. And I thought, so much for challenging the guy. I'm trying to not bleed, while I was playing. And like you said, it was sink or swim. And I thought, I am going to figure this out. I am not going to fail. I am not going to, call my parents, say, can you come and pick me up? I blew my chops out the first week. No way. And so I learned then how to deal with endurance. And again, I didn't have any teachers. I didn't have a Bobby Shoe to tell me about the right way to breathe. All I did was put ice pack on my chops between shows and kept going. And after about a month, I had all the second trumpet chops I needed. I could play 2 hours. We called it suicide second. And I could play for 2 hours nonstop, go get something to eat, and do it again. We did 2 shows a day, 7 days a week, 3 shows on Saturdays, and no days off for 9 months. So if you think, I got to rest my chops and stuff, which I highly recommend doing, resting your chops, but there was no chance I could do that. So how do we figure this out? How do you play 4 solid hours a day, 7 days a week for 9 months? No matter what. I got a callus. I got this. I got a cold sore. I got the flu. There was no subs. There was no days off. If you have the flu, you throw up and go on Van Sant and play. It was, like you said, sink or swim. There's no other word for it. There were no gray areas.
Yeah, well, it definitely is trial by fire, and for people who have, like for the younger generation, those of you who are in the audience who have never been at a circus where they have live musicians. Oh my God. Yeah. Those 2-hour hits, and it's not playing, easy peasy stuff.
Well, you're not sitting there while the tenor player takes a chorus. It's brass band music constantly. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, even the management of our circus, and then also Ringling, they didn't like paying guys, and then they'd look over and see you not playing. They were saying, I'm paying you. I want everybody playing all the time. What kind of arrangement is this? Get some arrangements where everybody plays. I'm paying them. So that was the deal. That said, the exposure I had to different styles of music, because the circus has acts from all over the world. So we'd get a Hungarian teeterboard act that might be 9 minutes long with phrases that aren't what we normally consider a phrase. It might be 11-bar phrase or something, and you're playing, and it just kind of goes on and on and on. But whoever did the hand manuscript back then, no finale, none of that stuff. Whoever did the hand manuscript put the stems on the wrong side of the black notes. So it's almost like, when you see stuff now on your phone, right, it looks backwards, or somebody's T-shirt's printed backwards. Well, this is how these notes look. So your brain isn't trained to decipher that. And so you had to kind of just switch over and say, well, this is how it is. I've got to read it. So we'd get stuff like that. We'd get stuff that was horribly arranged, or was arranged for something besides our 8-piece band. and we'd have to figure out, oh, well, there's alto sax parts missing. All right, so somebody has to scribble them out because we didn't have any saxes on the Clyde Beaty circus. So yeah, these are exposures that you couldn't get if you went to college or anything, because why? Why would you get that? If you went to college, you might be learning the music of Count Basie versus Stan Kenton versus Benny Goodman. There's different styles and different ways to approach those things, but you would never have this, because once again, why? You'd never be exposed to that. Why would you get educated about it? So you get that education on the road.
Yeah, and like you said, that's the key word, is the education. There is that exposure to all those styles. That's a musical education. But I think, as you're talking about having to figure out how to survive in that environment, how to deal with, when you're on a gig, how do you deal with chop problems? How do you deal with, the less than desirable acoustical settings? So you have to learn this kind of versatility. So like, what if you had to like kind of capsulate it? I mean, what do you think is, like, in terms of as a player, what do you think the biggest impact that those years in the circus had on you in your development?
That's a good question. The biggest impact it had on me, I think, was that when you think you're out of chops, maybe you aren't, because mentally, when we envision something or realize something, that kind of becomes the reality. If you think you're going to fail, you're probably going to fail, so I learned, like, no, just keep playing. You've got the chops to do it. Your body knows what to do. Your muscles know what to do. Okay, my jaw's tired. My abdomen's tired. My lips are swollen. Okay, but you can keep playing. It might not be the optimum situation, but you can do it. That's one thing. The other thing that the circus did for me, it pretty much made me fearless. So when somebody's handing out charts, a new arrangement and stuff like that, or you're in a recording studio, you're playing stuff you've got to play basically perfect, and you've never seen it before and stuff, you could start letting that take you over. Oh, I haven't had a chance to look at this. I haven't seen. No, just play it. You've been trained. You're a musician. It's math. There's, intervals and time you have to count. There's things like that. But if you're fearless about it, you can just go in and let's get it. Give me this thing. Let's go at it. So that kind of confidence, even if you're not that confident, but having that confidence from having done so many things, I think that's really helpful too.
Yeah, I mean, fear and second guessing ourselves, that is so dangerous, and it's so easy to get caught in that downward spiral. It's like if you chip a note or something like that, and then you start ruminating on it and you start worrying, and then, man, performances go way south.
Yeah, I frequently tell students, keep your brain moving forward. Just keep moving forward. And I give an example. We actually do this in my studio. But I say, well, when you're walking down the hall and you scuff your toe or something, like you trip, you don't fall down, but you stumble. And then you turn around and look at what? There's no brick there. There's no log. And then why are you turning around and looking? You just tripped over your sneakers. Now you're turning around and looking, and you're still moving forward. What's going to happen? You're going to run into a locker or somebody else or a post or something, because you're moving forward and looking back at basically your mistake. So we don't look back. Now, when you get to where you're going musically, you can look back. Well, what happened to letter C down here? Man, I trashed this thing. Let me think, oh, I see those triplets are miscounted, whatever, look back later, but not what happens. Keep moving forward, because like you said, it's a downward spiral once you get caught up in that. Oh, I made a mistake. Let me look at it. It's like, no, not now.
And that's kind of an interesting thing, because there's like this dichotomy that exists, because, when you're in the practice room, okay, and or you're in your lesson or whatever, and you make a mistake, that's when it's the okay, let's stop, let's figure out what happened, let's fix it, now let's move forward. Mm-hmm. It's different than on a gig, because on a gig you cannot do that. There is no time or place for that. So it's like getting the difference between the practice room or lesson mindset and the on stage mindset. Mm-hmm. And I think it's hard sometimes for people to understand that there are two different approaches, because if you're practicing and you never and you just continue to, and sometimes you need to do that, just continue to play through mistakes because you figure out how to do that. But if you never go back to try and correct things, then you're not going to make progress. But that's practice room. Practice room and stage are two different things.
Yeah, totally. So, of course, I'm sure some of the folks you've interviewed have talked about slow practice, which I think is important because our brains process this basically information, music in front of us at different rates, at different speeds. So if we go faster than our processor works, it doesn't really accomplish anything. You're actually kind of practicing mistakes instead of, so slow down, slow down, slow down. I don't even care how slow it is. Go the speed that your brain can look at everything, rhythms, articulations, accidentals, whatever. Go the speed your brain can handle it. And then slowly you increase that speed. That to me is more beneficial than doing something over and over and over again and trying to get it right. You're kind of practicing it wrong. So you're reinforcing wrong instead of right. So that's the practice room technique I use personally, and I recommend for students to do too. Then when you're sitting in band and they're doing it at the real tempo and you get lost, the band doesn't stop because you got lost. Like you said, in performance, you got to keep going. So there's two disciplines there, and they're both mental disciplines. And I think we spend a lot of time practicing, our chops, our tonguing, and our fingers and technique and everything else, but we don't practice the discipline that the brain needs to keep moving forward. So when the brain stops, everything stops. So you're playing along, and suddenly some rhythm throws you off. You've just stopped, and it's really hard to get back in the game. And this is another example I use, and every person I tell this to, I can tell this to a sixth grader or a 70-year-old like me, and we all start laughing. So, okay, you're studying for your science exam tomorrow. Let's say you're 11th grade, science exam tomorrow. And chapter 6, the whole exam is going to be on chapter 6. You're tired. It's 9:30 at night, but I got to study for this test. So you read a whole page of chapter 6, and you get to the bottom of the page and you go, oh, crap. I just read the whole page and I don't remember one thing on that page. And I know that's going to be on the test tomorrow. So you go back and you read that one page again, every single word, phrase, sentence, because you've got to remember this information. And the brain can do it. It's tired, but it can do it because why? We just made it go back and do it right. And that's the discipline that happens in music too. When we're reading along, and then suddenly your brain fails and the music stops. You just stop because you can't play anymore. So I try to remind us all that, the brain needs as much work as the chops and the tongue and so on and so forth, and the fingers. The brain needs those disciplines too. And sometimes the brain fails and we go, oh, okay, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. I'll practice more later. No. Make it go forward now, because the next time you play, you'll be able to read longer. But if you just stop when the brain's tired, then it's not going any farther.
Yeah. Well, there's a concept typically people call flow, in the zone, at the peak performance states. But there's a lot of research that shows that when you're, obviously when you're in that state, that's when everything is kind of coming together. That's when time stops and you're just engrossed. You're one with the music or one with the, whatever it is you're doing. But the research is showing that there's something called a challenge skill sweet spot, which is where you want to be. You don't want what you're doing to be too easy, because then you get bored. You don't want it to be too challenging, because then you get frustrated and anxious. So they say that where you want to be is like 4% beyond your current skill capabilities. So
I'm writing this down because this is fascinating.
Not a problem. So that, when you're just at that spot that's just a little bit beyond what you're comfortable with, then your mind is forced to focus. You are forced to be in that present moment. You can't be thinking about the past or the future. It's just like, I got to do this because it's just that far out of reach. So, like you're saying, that idea of that has to be trained. It's not that, certainly some of us can do it more innately because of other things we've done in our lives. But when you're in the practice room or in the studio, your trumpet studio, if you're a teacher, I think it's really important that you help your students to understand that there is this very specific kind of mental strategy that you need to develop if you want to maximize your abilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not, doesn't have to be complicated. Your brain gets tired just like anything else gets tired. If you've ever been in a weight room or a gym and you're trying to do 10 reps and you get to 8 and you can barely lift the bar at 8, it's like the coach goes, no, 2 more, give me 2 more. That's when you're building muscle. You didn't build muscle 1 through 8. Right. You're going to build it on 9 and 10. Okay, if we stop practicing when the brain starts failing us, that's as far as your brain's going to go, whatever that is. My brain's good for 47 minutes and then it gets tired. Okay, well, I want 52 minutes, I want 55 minutes, but we get that by that little extra stuff, just like we read chapter 6 a little again, thinking really hard. So read your exercise again. And I tell us, don't make any mistakes. Okay, your brain's tired. I want you to read that Arbenz again. Slow down. Don't make any mistakes. It's just math. There's no rhythms there you don't know. There's no fingerings there you don't know. Yet you just stopped all over it. So go back and do it again and don't make any mistakes. And this could be, 55 minutes into a 60-minute lesson. And then the player will do it perfect. See, you can do it, but you had to make the brain go to work. Our brain's busy making new cells and digesting our breakfast and growing your fingernails and your hair, and you're going, I want to read this 5/4 thing in 6 flats again. The brain's going, what? I'm not doing that. I got work to do here. So this is where that training, I think, is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to the way that, because the brain stuff, that's my jam. I love talking about that stuff. But it's that combination of doing the work, front loading. So that's what you're doing in the practice room. You're when you're doing your Arbenz, when you're doing your Clarks, when you're playing your scales, all that sort of stuff. That's setting the foundation. And then it's how do you make those connections? What I tell when I taught martial arts professionally for almost 30 years. I would always tell my students, there's nothing that I'm going to show you that you don't already know how to do at an extremely high level. Mm-hmm. And you look at me like, well, I've never studied martial arts before. I'm like, no, it's just your body moving. There's nothing that I'm going to show you that is unusual to your body. What's unusual is the coordinations, mm-hmm. How you put the things together, how you combine them. But the mechanics, you're already a master of this. Now we just have to figure out how to create these combinations of movements that you maybe have not been familiar with. And it's the same thing with like with playing trumpet. It's like you were saying, unless you're doing playing those Hungarian tunes or an Indian or something like that.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
You already know all the rhythms. You already know all the notes. You know what the sounds are. You may not have seen them in this particular combination.
Right.
But
Correct. Yeah.
you already know everything. So, sometimes our brain gets in the way and it's kind of like, oh crap, this is all new. How am I going to do this? So it's like, no, it's not all new. It's all old.
It's all old. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the kind of things I love talking about, but definitely like when you're talking about like, seeing something new and like having to read a chart and things like that, because I know you do a lot of work in doing producing and recording for people. And I think in the studio, that's always kind of a scary thing when you're kind of in this new environment, maybe you have a chart thrown at you. How do you help as a producer? How do you help an artist get past some of these mental blocks that are standing in the way between them doing a mediocre at best performance and really drawing out their best possible version of themselves?
Another good question. So the producing that I do is usually with really high quality, talented artists. So my role as producer in that regard is to get them to give their best performance. I'm not recording, people who've never been in the studio before for the most part. But a lot of times they're recording artists who are intimidated by being in a studio. It's a totally sterile environment. It's not comfortable. The clock's ticking. Somebody's paying for this studio time at however much per hour. So a lot of artists will get nervous because, they don't want to spend more of their money if they're the artist paying for it, or more of the label's money or whatever. So my job as producer is to relate to those people as a musician, like I was sitting there next to them. We've all been there. Like you said, none of this is new, but that whole intimidation of being in the studio and I only paid for 3 hours and I got to get this many songs done and everything, that creates a lot of stress. So a lot of it's about reducing stress, having a good time, making as much music as possible, and getting the best performance out of those folks. Sometimes it'll be, nowadays, when we were using a 2-inch tape at the 15 IPS inches per second, you could fit 16 minutes on a 2-inch tape. That meant you had to be and the tape back then, it could have been anywhere from $125 to $180 a reel. Well, if you could fit 16 minutes on it and you want to record a 1-hour album and you're going to do multiple takes, this is just adding up. All of a sudden, you've got $1,000 just in tape. Well, we don't have that anymore. It's digital. You can do as many takes as you want, so on and so forth. So that takes some of the stress out of it. But performing to our best ability, it really comes from relaxation and confidence. So those are the goals, because with relaxation and confidence, then we're going to get the product that group of musicians can offer when they're having fun, when they're having a good time, when they feel comfortable. And so that's more of it than anything else, because we can do multiple takes now. We can comp them. And so you can pick the best this. Well, the coda was great on the first take, but on the second take, okay, well, let's, cut and paste and do all that stuff. That's also important as a producer, that somebody goes, oh man, I really messed up this. Don't worry about it. Letter B was perfect on the other take. Yeah, well, no, it's my job. You just keep playing. You're playing great. Just keep doing that. The other thing is in the studio, and this is what's hard for me, especially when I'm playing lead trumpet in the studio, is I might have a really demanding thing and I played it great, and somebody else goes, oh, sorry, second trombone or third trumpet or somebody, oh man, I missed the key change or whatever. Then we got to do it again. Now I got to do that really difficult part again, because if we're recording a horn section, you can't just do one part at a time. So we have to do the whole thing again, and I have to get it right again. And then somebody else messed up. I have to get it right again. Or maybe I do something wrong this time. Now I've had to do the same difficult thing 6, 7, 8 times when I did it right the first time. So that goes back to what you're talking about, endurance, chops, the mental thing. Oh man, I don't know how much longer I can keep playing the shout chorus, so these are, studio work is challenging, especially it really depends on the budget. I have a book called Sessions with Sinatra, and one of the things Sinatra would do, he'd have a huge orchestra in there, and Capitol Studios, and he'd go in and let's say they were going to do 4 songs that day, and he would start singing, and he wanted to sing with the band. He couldn't, didn't want to do it any other way. And of course, at some certain point in history, you couldn't do it any other way. You had to do it with everybody else because there was like 3-track recording. So if he didn't feel good, he'd start singing, and he would just go, you know what? I'm not feeling it today, guys. Really, I'm really sorry. And he would send everybody home, pay them for the session, send everybody home, and they would get rebooked again. And because he had to feel good to do it. Well, we don't have those budgets, that he had. But that's nice when you do, when you could do something and say, you know what, let's go to lunch now, come back, and we'll get the rest of it this afternoon. So it's each producing job that I do is unique. It's almost like making a new dish. Hey, Charlie, you're making dinner tonight. Okay. What do we got? I've got chicken, and I got this, and I got some onions, and I got this. Okay, I got to make dinner. All right, Charlie, you're making dinner tonight. Oh, what do we got? Well, the stove's broken, so you're going to grill. And all I've got is pork tenderloin. Okay. I mean, each time you do it, somebody goes, wow, Charlie's a great cook. Or, man, don't get Charlie to produce your record. It'll be a mess, So it's really a lot of things. But a lot of it's just trusting the musicians and making them feel as comfortable as possible.
Yeah. Well, what you said is so interesting, because it ties into what we're talking about earlier about, what you learned in the circus about being fearless. That's a big thing, because there are these mindsets. Some people freak out on stage because everybody's looking at me. Mm-hmm. Some people freak out in the studio because, oh crap, if I play this wrong, it is, I gotta either we have to go back and do it again, or if it's a live recording, then it's like, oh crap, this is going to be out there forever. So you feel that pressure to get it right, and it's a different kind of pressure. I think it's kind of a challenge as a budding musician to develop those mental tools to be able to go from the live setting, what's demanded in the live setting and what's demanded in the studio, and how to make the best of it. But there's also then I think that there's a slightly different approach that you have to take in terms of the way you play in the studio, as opposed to the way you might be playing. You can get away with playing a certain way on stage that you can't get away with playing in the studio. It's not the optimal thing.
Yeah. So I totally agree with that, because if you're on stage and you're a live setting, you might have a microphone, but still, we don't know who's operating that microphone. So in the studio, though, all your dynamic range from pianissimo to triple forte is within a space of 12, 14 inches where your microphone is, unless they're recording the whole section. But still, you don't have to play to the back of the auditorium. You just have to put your dynamic range in that space. And that's a different mindset. It's a different approach. It's still trumpet playing, and they still expect you to be the trumpet player they hired because of your sound or your approach or your leadership skills in a section, or all the above. But you can that gets consolidated into a smaller space than a live stage show would be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm a firm believer that to get the best out of yourself requires you to learn as much as you can about your craft. And, as we were talking about earlier about, learning history and things like that, but also, about the technical aspects of things, beyond just the tucka stuff. But it's like for me, some of the things that have helped me out tremendously as being a live performer was getting to hang out with sound men and actually learning how to run a board, learning how to be front of house, learning how to be a monitor mixer, because it helped me to understand what they're dealing with, and then help me to understand how to make my performance mesh with what they need to do to make, because they're responsible for the whole band, not just for making me sound good, which is an almost impossible thing. But in the same thing in the studio is like I love to sit in the studio and talk to the engineer, to talk to the producer, talk to the mastering engineer and things like that, to understand their processes so that I can do my best job to make their job easier. So if we're both trying to make our jobs easier, then I think that's when we get the best result. So, when you're working with like your students, do you ever do things with them to help them understand how miking works, the principles of, how do you think about placement? What do you think about what kind of microphone, whether you use a ribbon versus a condenser, and how to deal with different acoustical settings and treatments. Are those things that you get into with your students, or is it something that you just let them figure out on their own?
Another good question, Jose. I got into producing because of what you just said earlier about talking to the engineers and stuff. So I would be doing recording at like 3 recordings a week in the same studio, different engineers, different producers and stuff. And so I would go in and play, and then we'd listen to the playbacks, and I might be very pleased with my sound. 3 days later, same horn, same studio, maybe a different microphone, different staff. I'd play something and I'd go into the playbacks, and the trumpet sounded awful. I mean, awful. And I go, is that the sound that the trumpet's going to be? Oh, we're going to fix that later. Okay, none of my business, and I might say to your listeners, all the things you talked about, I'd go in to talk to the engineer and talk to the producer and talk to the manager. We don't get to do that most of the time. You should just go in there, play your instrument, say thank you, and get the hell out and mind your own business. Okay, so anyway, now day 3 of the same week, I go in and same thing, same studio, same trumpet, different sound, once again, a third sound. So that's when I started asking questions like you talked about, like how could I be, especially if it's an engineer I know and trust. Okay, when I was with you on Monday, the trumpet sounded great. And then I was here Wednesday and it sounded like, a transistor radio. And it's the same SSL console and stuff. Oh, well, they probably use a different mic. I go, it was a different mic. Yeah. And then I don't know how they had the mic preset. I go, what's a mic pre? So I learned as I went along. And then if I was in a session where I felt I had the ability to do it, again, you should just show up, shut up, and play your part. But I could go, hey, do you have a 421 instead of this? Because they might have used a SM57 Shure mic, which you use rock and roll on a stage, right? But it's full of harmonic distortion. Oh yeah. I said, well, you might want to, if you have one, and you could have your intern set it up, put it next to the other one, and then later you could A/B them and see which one, which sound you prefer. So I learned that way by experimentation, everything else. There's no like book you can read that tells you these things, because a lot of it is your ability to have a personality and to deal with other people as well. Or to tell a producer, oh, I really like this Coles ribbon mic, man. Do you have one of those? Yeah, I got one. Hey, Jesse, go set up the Coles ribbon mic for Charlie. So these are things you can't really teach. You have to know when to suggest or when to shut up. And then you got to know what you're talking about, like you said. So to answer your question about my students, when they say I have to make a recording to send it in for my audition. Okay. So, if we do it here, and it has to be video, I'll set up a Manhasset stand with their iPhone on the stand, and then I'll have them play a little bit, maybe 10 feet from them, and we listen to sound. Just play 4 measures. All right, then I'll move the stand farther back and try that and see how we like that sound. Again, this is the sound of their phone, my house, my room that we're recording this in. And so we do that because of the proximity effect, because of how far the microphone is from the source, which is our trumpet bell. So we find the sweet spot. Oh, that sounds like me right there. Okay, we're going to record right here, 9 feet from where you're standing, and that's going to be your video because it can't be edited or anything else. So, but we want the best sound. We don't want it distorted because you did it 3 feet from your bell and stuff. So in those regards, we do that. If a student approaches me and says, which they do sometimes, oh, I want to buy a mic, what should I get? You know, so I have recommendations for that too, which one of my favorite trumpet mics is a Shure SM7. It's the one you see on radios and stuff. I don't know what you're using there. I can't really see it, but you know, SM7 is great. When I record at home, I use that. I also have a USB mic too, but it doesn't sound as good as the SM7 with a Focusrite, converter. So everything depends on, what you want to use. When I do play live, I've got a DPA 4099 to clip on. The clip is so tiny, it doesn't deaden the bell. Some of the other clamps clamp onto your bell. It's like, oh, play a note and then clamp your fingers on the bell and see which sound you like better. The clamp deadens the bell. I do want to say something else now that we're talking about that, about live stuff, is that, our bells not only disperse energy, but they collect energy as well. So if you're in a salsa band, a rock band, and if you just hold your bell while the monitors are really loud and the bass is too loud, the bell is already alive. It's energized by all of the sound vibrations in the room and on the stage. And then we're going to put our mouthpiece in there and try to play a bunch of high C's in a row on a bell that's already alive from way too much information, energy on stage. You're already at a huge disadvantage. I don't care if you've got great earbuds. I don't care if you've got one of those shields so you can hear yourself, plexi thing. The energy that your horn is already collecting, you can't make that go away. So you're at a disadvantage trying to energize your bell from behind the horn. You're just energizing it with so much percentage past what's already happening. And I think a lot of us don't know that or don't think about it, that your rate of return is totally different on an environment where it's really loud on stage.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was just having a discussion with Brian Davis, great.
Love his playing, man.
Yeah, great players. Doing a lesson with Brian, and he said something to me that was like, "Oh, damn! I never thought about that." And he was talking about playing in tune, and like the difference between what you hear and what it gets out because of the fact that, like in my case, I also play with a clip on in live situations most of the time. And say, the first thing is that your sound doesn't fully develop until about 6 feet away from your bell.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Sound is still developing, and then what you're getting through the monitors has been EQ'd because they're notching things. They're pulling out the frequencies that are most likely to cause feedback, which tend to be either like the super lows, or they're going to be in the highs, and right as a lead trumpet player, right in that spot where I'm going to be cranking it out. Mm-hmm. So you're not really hearing your real sound. So what you're tuning to is not your actual sound. And that's why sometimes you play a little flat. I'm like, oh, damn, that makes absolute sense now. But those are the things that we don't think about. We just think, okay, mic in front, the mic is going to get exactly what I'm putting out, and that's it. No, everything gets flavored and colored and shaded and manipulated, and understanding how that works then gives us the best possible options of how to either mitigate those negative things or how to maximize them, how to use them to our advantage. So, from your perspective, I mean, what do you prefer? Are you? I mean, I know you love doing everything if it's involving music, but do you prefer being on the stage? Do you prefer being on the studio? Do you prefer being behind the console? I mean, what's bringing Charlie the most joy?
Wow. That's tough. I think because they're all different. That's, if you ask me, what do I like, breakfast, lunch, or dinner better? That's one thing, because I do all three in my kitchen, but these are totally different things. So when I can just answer them individually. When I'm in the studio, I like when the engineer and the producer, when I'm trumpet playing in the studio, I like when the engineer producer know what they're doing, know what they're after, and they do it efficiently. The thing I dislike is when we play something, and then they go, okay, just a second. Waiting. Okay, can we do that again? Okay, now, but it might be 3 minutes later. Now I'm not, there's blood isn't in my chops. I'm not warmed up. It's like, what? Then they expect us to play perfectly again, like you're dropping the needle on a record. If they would just keep going, we might have more success and be more efficient. So when everybody's efficient behind the glass, I love that. I love the studio for that. Let me do what I do, and let's keep going. Don't stop 7 minutes between you guys trying to figure out this and that. So that's important. So when we get results in the studio, and the usually it's with a horn section. So when things are going great, that's extremely rewarding. I did one session for Disney, and it was the show was the Princess and the Frog. It was a film, and then Disney did a cruise ship stage show with it. So they had already done the band recording and stuff, but they needed the Dixieland stuff, and they needed, again, this is a good thing about doing your homework. So they really wanted the New Orleans Dixieland. If you know anything about Dixieland, it moved from New Orleans up to St. Louis, then up to Chicago, and it changed. Jazz changed as it, there's different styles for each part of the river. Anyway, this was the old New Orleans 2-beat Louis Armstrong kind of thing. So they hired me, a clarinet player, and a trombone player. And so in the booth was the arranger, the producer, and the show director. So the arranger, totally cool, the guy from LA. The producer, totally cool Disney guy who does these things all the time. But the show director this is the guy who's going to be on that cruise ship, and he's envisioning what this is going to sound like on that stage when you're on that cruise and you go into the theater to see the Princess and the Frog show. So we have 3 different concepts here. And so each person offered, oh no, it's got to be like this. The arranger go, well, instead of that, try this. Okay. The Disney producer, great guy. So he was just trying to keep things moving along. But the show director, who didn't know anything about music, he just knew about visually what it's going to look like on stage. So anyway, and I'll tell you another funny story about that, but it was so much fun. This thing was so much fun that after the session, I think it was a 4-hour session. After the session, the trombone player and a clarinet player and we just didn't want it to end. It's like, let's go to lunch. So we went out and we just hung out often. And the energy from that session was so powerful that we just didn't want it to end. No, we didn't go get drunk or anything, but we just wanted to hang out and talk and everything. But I'll tell you, as a trumpet player, you're going to love this. So on the stage show, if you've seen the film, or if somebody who's listening has seen the film, Lewis is the big gator, the big swamp gator, you know, and he's obviously named Lewis for a reason. Anyway, he's this animatronic guy with a costume on. So I think Lewis was like 7.5 feet tall on stage. And he's got a trumpet he holds up to his, you know, mouth, but it's not real trumpet. So, but he's bigger than life. So I'm playing this stuff, and they go, the Disney guy was happy, the arranger was happy, but the show director is going, "Hey, Charlie, can you make that like," and he doesn't know any of our terminology. "Could you make it like, I don't know, louder or bigger?" I'm already playing double forte, it was F's and G's, you know. So I go, I don't know. I mean, you can turn it up in the mix. I can't play a G any louder than I just played it, you know. And so, but he was asking for, what he wanted was this really over the top kind of character, but it had to be musically over the top because of what you're seeing on stage. So once I realized this, I started doing stuff that typically I hate when lead trumpet players do it, or trumpet players period do it. I started playing greasy and screaming up to notes and stuff, even though it didn't say that, you know. I mean, just over the top, the kind of stuff, if you were sitting next to somebody, you'd go, "What the heck are you doing, man? That sounds like horrible," you know. So then at the very end, which is the end of the show, I had to play this cadenza up to a G, and he goes, "Ready for this? Charlie, could you hang over the cutoff?" I go, "Hang over? Yeah, I don't like guys that hang over, you know." But so I said, but sure, of course, I'll do that. So I hung over, and he goes, "Yeah, could you do it longer? Like hang over farther?" Okay, so I did it farther, and he goes, "Could you do like a little shake or something on the end when you hang over?" I mean, all this stuff that makes you into a jerk lead trumpet player. And he says, "No, because Lewis is this the end of the show. The whole cast is on stage, and he's out there with his big horn and everything." So anyway, it ended up, I played the longest hangover, greasiest G I've ever played in my life. And they're going, "Perfect," you know. So, again, it took those three different people, the arranger, the producer, and then this show director, to get this thing the way they wanted it. Another thing in that show was that, you know, we're just looking at music, and it says, all right, ad lib here, and then at 2 before letter D, forte. Okay, so we doing that, and again, the show director says, "Well, guys, right there, 2 before letter D is when the doors open up and they're going into this party and the crowd's in there, and you guys are already noodling along, like, you know, behind the doors, and then the doors open up into this giant Dixieland party." Oh, okay, because it doesn't say that. It just has the chord changes on there. So we had to just go, you know, and just had to go for it, right? Totally, there was nothing indicating that on the music, but we needed the show director for us to do what he needed to make that happen. This was so much fun to be asked to provide these things, and then, you know, and have them be very, you know, pleased with it afterwards. So that's a studio thing that was tremendously rewarding, because we got it right. You know, stage stuff's always rewarding when you play great, and then, you know, people show by their applause. There's nothing. I like live performing, and to me, there's nothing better, because it's kind of why we do it. to get that, response, to play something and then get the response from people that they really appreciated what you did, or they felt what you did. And then the thing I like about teaching with trumpet is when a student, what we tell a student hits home and they get it, and sometimes they get it more than anything we anticipated as directing them. So that's always rewarding. When I had a student who got a full scholarship to Juilliard. Everything, his family would never have been able to do that. But when he called me, he goes, "Man, I got a free ride to Juilliard." And I just told him, I said, "But man, practice, don't get any bad habits, and don't get any ballerinas pregnant, because they're counting on you to if they're giving you this, they want to say, oh, he's one of us." His name is Enrique Sanchez. He's just doing a lot of touring and stuff now, and started doing some recording in LA. But Enrique made them proud, and then they could go, "Oh, Enrique Sanchez, he's one of ours. He's Juilliard, jazz studies program." So these are all rewards in different ways.
Yeah, and that's the great thing, is that I think music, is, if you have the bug for music, I mean, if this is something that you love and that you have an affinity for, there are so many ways that you can express that. It's not just, I have to land a gig with a symphony, or that I have to be a professor somewhere. There's so many different aspects of the music industry that you can be a part of, that allows you to contribute to the ongoing evolution of music, that allows you to make an impact. So you don't have to just limit yourself. And like me, I like doing as many things as possible. So that's why I love performing. I love recording. I love producing. Yeah. So anything, I think that, allowing yourself to be open to the options that are there, that's kind of crucial to people's development. And you had your own record label. Is that
I do. Yeah. I started my own label because I wanted to record things I wanted to record. And, when I started that, it was 1992. If you went to one of the major jazz labels or sent them your, mixes and stuff, they weren't really interested. So I thought, well, I could do this myself if I had a following. So I worked on that, and that's obviously every young player knows that now. You've got Instagram following, or Facebook, or WhatsApp, and whatever the media you use, you have a following. That's your key to success. And I love that technology has flattened the line now. You used to have to be, Clark Terry or something or Miles Davis, or, Al Hurt or something to get a record label interested in you. Now, all you need is your fans. And the funny thing is, if you have enough fans, somebody looks and goes, well, this person has 1.2 million followers. The label's going to go, we better see if Jose wants to be a part of our label, because you come, programmed for what they're looking for. So, I can put one of my videos up just as quick as Garth Brooks can put one of his up, so the playing field's leveled now, which I love that. And young people know that too. One of the things that bugs me, though, and this was really during the pandemic, and it's part of our embrace of technology now, is that we still all wanted to play and produce things and make music and everything. It's kind of hard to not do that. So I would start to see these what I call postage stamp big bands. You see a big band, and it's a cool concept where everybody would just play their part and send it in. But the only thing is, there's no mistakes on anything I see anymore. Now, we all make mistakes, man. And I have yet to, there's a few people that'll put stuff on Instagram that's got some chips here and there or something that they cacked or airballed. But are we all really as perfect as I see on social media? I don't think so. So I think that creates an environment where you're not good enough. If I watch 1,000 trumpet players on Instagram this afternoon, how many clams will I hear? And then how am I going to compare with that? How's Charlie Bertini going to possibly compare to that? I can't play through an etude without chipping something, and or maybe I do, but then let me just do it over until I get it right. But I'm not really that perfect player, and neither is anybody else, So that to me creates an environment that's not real, and that puts pressure on us. Just like you read about all the young, especially girls, who are trying to look beautiful and everything because everything they see is this level of beauty that's unattainable. So I'm wondering about that for musicians as well. Anyway, those postage stamp things, it was a great idea. And we couldn't get together. We couldn't, congregate and make a recording. So people did it that way. But I wonder if our technology is getting in the way of, our ability to just work hard at what we do and not edit what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's real interesting because I remember the first time I was in the studio. The first time I was in the studio, I mean, that back in the 70s, it was 2-inch tape and it was the razor blade and slice and dice and that sort of thing. And then I remember the first time I was in the studio where the engineer was using auto-tune, and it was like, it was a completely different thing, and it was nice in that case because it was like, oh, okay, well, that F was just, I mean, after playing it 6 times, I still couldn't just kind of get it super dialed in. Like, okay, I can fix that, and just kind of pitched it up a little bit. Okay, boom. So I didn't have to, kill myself. Yeah. But then you start to see people that instead of using that as something to make these minor corrections where everything is just so overly processed and so overly corrected that and particularly like with vocalists, where you don't hear any of the nuance. You're talking about people that, being perfect, that it's too sterile. There's no vibrato, there's no, and especially if you're talking about things like doing jazz and blues and I mean, even like, rock and roll and funk and stuff like that, there's got to be a realness to it. And that realness comes from the imperfections in what we do, as opposed to the perfections. Mm-hmm. So I mean, when you're talking about technology and its place, what are your thoughts on using technology and how do you straddle that line of using it to its best advantage to make the product, the final package, as opposed to trying to use it to mitigate like the lack of work that was done previously?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have all these tools now and plugins and all these other things. And that's great that we have them, but that doesn't mean you have to use them all. So I'm all for, like we were talking earlier, mic placement. Well, instead of making the trumpet fatter, why don't you stop EQing it and move the microphone a little closer, move it an inch closer, and the trumpet will sound fatter. I mean, don't do it later, do it now. Get the truth in performance, which is one of the things Barbra Streisand talked about. It's truth in performance. So you can have a perfect recording that sounds amazing, perfect, everything's perfect. And like you said, it's sterile. But then somebody can play you a cassette of some guy doing the same thing, and the cassette's a cassette, right? But it moves you because you hear the truth in performance. And so with the technology, my suggestion is do not take out the truth in performance. If you're taking it out, maybe you're going to fix a little this, fix this here. When you start repairing everything, it's a different product. And and we lose that because we're living, breathing people and with emotions and stuff. And what you just mentioned are the things that make it emotional. And when you take that out, it goes away. The emotion goes away. Sure, it's a great arrangement. Oh, it's perfect playing. It's this and that and everything else. The balance of all the instruments is great. But what happened to the truth in performance? So that's what I try to make sure doesn't get done is taking that out. You can mix something to death and mix the life right out of it. I'm still a big fan of just sitting in my office and turning everything off and listening to music because we inundated with our phones and everything else. I love my phone. I love everything about it. But there's times to turn it all off and put on, an Ella Fitzgerald record. There was no auto-tune. There's no auto-tune in Billie Holiday. There's no auto-tune in old Doc Severinsen records. Put those on and get goosebumps and know why you're getting them. There was no Melodyne. There's no auto-tune. The mix was whatever the mix was. That's it. So to me, my effort when I produce is to try to get that truth in performance, or at least leave it in there, whatever's there.
Yeah.
On my YouTube channel, I've posted a lot of things of artists on my channel and myself. It's AppleJazz 3410 is my channel. And so everything on there, I feel has the truth in performance. Could I have fixed some of it or more of it? Yes. Did I fix some of it? Yeah. Some, especially balances and stuff. But otherwise, it's really important that we make that musical connection. It's not just something you can dance to, at least for us as wind instrument players. If you're making a pop track and stuff, maybe your priorities are going to be different and you fix everything you possibly can to make it a sellable pop song. But for what we do, it's got to be truth in performance.
I love that, truth in performance.
Yeah.
That might be my next T-shirt, truth in performance, right there.
Yeah, okay, it's totally true. That's what moves us.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Charlie. Well, I've got like 3 segments that we need to get through. These are kind of my standard segments. So let's get going on that so we can let you get on to the rest of your day.
Okay.
The first one, and this is a great one, great segue actually. This first segment is called Sound Off. It's brought to us by my good friend Michael Barkley of Barkley Microphones. There's a Barkley microphone right there. And this is about concepts of sound. So let's kind of maybe keep riffing on, as you just touched on, like studios concepts of sound. So what are some of the things you already talked about, like mic placements? What are some of the other things that we can do to make sure that we're maximizing and getting the truth of performance of our trumpet sound, making that trumpet sound like it's a real trumpet?
We each have a preconceived idea in our heads of what we should sound like. That preconceived idea came from whatever influences we have, whether it was Chet Baker or Maynard Ferguson. It's a preconceived idea in our head, and we can't sound like anybody else. We're going to sound like ourselves. So it's very important that we find equipment that helps us get that preconceived sound that's in our head. So guys who are searching, sometimes you're looking for a horn or a mouthpiece or something that can do this or can do that, but it's still, our goal is to get that preconceived sound, whatever that is. So my suggestion is to find whatever equipment helps you get your preconceived sound as efficiently and quickly as possible with as much accuracy as you can. So, and sometimes your sound for one thing is different for something else. When I play piccolo trumpet, I want to sound like so-and-so. When I play flugelhorn, I want to sound like this person. When I play lead trumpet, I want to sound like this. When I play jazz, I want to sound like that. Do I have to have 5 different horns for that? Well, sometimes you do, because you need a flugelhorn and a pick and so on. But find the equipment that helps you get that sound, and then work on your sound. And by the way, that sound can change over time as our influences change. Pretty simple, I guess. So.
Okay. Well, great. And you actually, and what you've done is already started to move into our next segment, which is called Geared Up. And Geared Up is brought to us by Venture Mouthpieces Venture, where technology, design, and craftsmanship intersect. Use the code TrumpetGurus21 at checkout and save 10% on your order. And so this is about gear, and you already started to talk about that a little bit. That the gear does play a role, maybe not as much of a role as some people tend to think that it does, but so when you're talking about finding the right gear for the job, it's an experimental process. So what are some of the ways that you suggest people go about determining what gear they might need or want to utilize to make their job that much easier?
Okay, the answer to your question is a little complicated, because things have changed over the years. So when you and I were kids, you went and bought a Bach Stradivarius trumpet. You wanted to get a good sound, you needed a Bach Strad. Well, there wasn't a lot of competition back then, and I think Bach still is the biggest selling trumpet. But then Yamaha came along, they have fabulous research and development. So they would actually ask artists, hey, try this horn, and would tell me what you think. And then they would actually listen to those trumpet players and make changes and stuff. And then they would come up with this one, whatever, different flavors, And Bach always had different horns basically on the bell contours, and whether they were standard or lightweight, regular lead pipe, reverse lead pipe. Those are the choices. Now, it's gone from some of the big horn companies to a lot of handmade horns and so on. So this now becomes actually more of a challenge, because there's more choices. Where do you go to try out horns now? You might have a friend that's got such and such handmade horn. Well, let me try that. But then that person had that horn made for them. That doesn't mean that that's right for you, but that horn company could make a custom horn for you, but you'd have to go visit them and have the money to do it and everything else. So it's gotten very personalized, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a complicated thing. And you also need money. So let's say you spend, I don't know, $4,500 having a trumpet made just for you, and that's great through college, and then you get a symphony job, and that's not the right sound. So now you got to go through this process again. So, but we're all not strangers to the fact that we try different horns and play this for a while and then play that for a while. And so, when I was a kid, probably you too, Doc Severinsen was a Getzen guy, the Getzen Eterna 900, I think. And then I wanted one of those so bad, because Doc Severinsen was my hero, and my parents couldn't afford that. So there's no way. This just wasn't going to happen. My uncle, who was a professional musician, he was a sax player. He went to New York, and he bought a Bach Strad, and my parents told me it about broke him. It was $289 for that Bach Strat in the mid 60s. I think it was just after they moved to Elkhart. But I had a professional horn that I could take with me to all through high school, to college. If I got a symphony gig or my circus gig, it worked for anything. So I'm not promoting Bach Strats, but I'm just saying this was a different time. So same thing with mouthpieces now. You used to just go get pretty much a Bach mouthpiece or a Parduba double cup or something. There weren't a lot of choices. I happen to be a Warburton fan. I've been playing Warburton mouthpieces since the mid 80s. And I like them because you can pick something that's comfortable for your face, then you can interchange backbores. So now I can go from a lead trumpet position with the same top and put a different backbore in and get that Chet Baker kind of sound without all the edge and everything to it. So I like that modular thing, but a lot of companies make that now too. So what I would recommend is same thing. Find what works for you as efficiently as possible for you to get that sound. And like I said, your sound might be different because, I just got a job with a Houston Symphony. Well, I can't sound like I sounded at North Texas State in the 1 o'clock band, So you've got to find what works for you for the job you're doing, and then do it as efficiently as possible.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Yeah. And I remember my first pro horn was, I think maybe it was $500.
Yeah.
It was a Holton ST302, a Holton MF horn. So,
Yeah.
And now it's like $500 for a horn. Something's got to be seriously wrong with it. So.
Yeah, the valves won't work in a month. Yeah,
exactly.
I go through this with parents a lot, Jose, is that, well, I want to buy Johnny a trumpet. He's doing really well. He's going into 10th grade next year, and I can spend, I want to spend $1,200. And there's an intermediate model, such and such. I'm going to go into labels and stuff, but intermediate model, shiny, brand new silver horn. And I said, no, don't get that. I said, let me find you a used Xeno for $1,200 or a used box Strat for $1,200. And then that way little Johnny can take it. Same thing. Because unfortunately, when you get to college, you're going to get judged a lot more than you are in high school. So if you show up for brass choir with a student model such and such, even the band director is going to go, what? You're going to play on that? I mean, it's not fair, because if you sound good, you sound good. Yeah. But I'm sorry, man, take something of value that, and the other thing for parents is about, buying a good horn, reputable horn, is that when your kid decides to go into oceanography instead of music, you're going to sell that horn and get what you paid for it, So that's another thing for parents who don't know. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, we got one final segment, and this is a fun one. And this is brought to us by Robinson's Remedies, rapid relief for your sore and tired chops. This is called the Robinson's Remedy Rapid Fire Round. It's a series of questions that kind of go all over the place. Some will be about music, some won't. So I just need your quickest response.
Okay.
Are you ready, Charlie?
I guess so, yeah. Okay,
here we go. First question. Who's the biggest influence on your life that is not a trumpet player?
It's going to have to be my mom.
All right. What's your favorite book?
Well, that's tough too. I see one in front of you. I have a book called Earth's Secrets, and it's not published anymore, but Frank Green wanted a copy of it, so I actually typed it all out and sent it to him. It's called Earth's Secrets, and it's just a lot of short little things, very metaphysical things to think about.
Okay, cool. Maybe I can get a copy of that too. What is the worst movie you've ever seen?
Worst movie I've ever seen. Jeez, I don't remember, because I block out dumb stuff like that.
All right. Well, we'll go to the next one. If you weren't a trumpet player, what would you want to be?
Oh, that's easy. I really like graphic arts. And so it's funny, because my dad was an engineer, and he knew I had really good skills at like making posters and stuff like that. And of course, now with Photoshop and all kinds of stuff, I love doing that. But he always kept trying to get me to be be a graphic artist, because I think he wondered what I want to be when I grow up. So yeah, graphic arts.
All right, cool. What's your favorite drink?
That has changed over the years, and I don't drink it anymore. But my favorite drink is vodka with lime juice, a gimlet. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. You could have a dinner party, and at this dinner party, you can invite any 3 living people. We'll exclude, the usual suspects, family and friends, stuff like that. But if you could have any 3 people in the world there to have a discussion with you, who would you want to invite?
Can they be trumpet players?
They can be trumpet players. They can be athletes, actors.
Yeah. No, they would be trumpet players, so we'd have something to talk about. Yeah. So it would definitely be my friend Wayne Bergeron would be there. And then my crusty friend who I love very much, Warren Vacher. And then I'd have somebody younger, probably maybe Tyler Jaeger. Yeah, somebody younger. So we could all talk trumpet and get 3 totally different, 4, because I'd be there. And it would be how much we agree upon, too.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Just keep Tyler away from the from the hard stuff.
Oh yeah, man. That's his job.
I've had some good hangs with Tyler and Nanner too. So same thing. You have this dinner party, so you're going to have you and Tyler and Wayne and Warren there. But you've got 3 additional seats at the table, and you could have any 3 people from history.
Can they be trumpet players or not?
It could be anybody you want. Any 3 people. Who would you? Yeah, any 3 people that ever lived. Who would you want to have there?
Oh boy, that's such a wide question. I think George McGovern, who I've read all his books, and he's also a jazz lover, so he would be great to have there. How about a great singer, Frank Sinatra?
All right.
And have somebody else, maybe a producer, Alan Sides, recording engineer.
Oh man.
And we still all have something in common to talk about. So.
Exactly. That sounds awesome. All right. Next question for you. Lacquer, plated, or raw?
Not raw. My first horn was lacquered and stuff. I always wanted a shiny silver trumpet when I was a kid. So my first horn was lacquered. I took it to Giardinelli's when I was with the circus in early 70s. We had a 2-week stand, and so I took it to Giardinelli's and because I wanted it silver plated, and they said you pick it up in 2 weeks on your way out of town. Next place to go in Virginia. Went to pick it up. The guy's really proud of it. Opens it up, takes the velvet thing down, lacquered. They overhauled it. They lacquered it again. And I didn't cry, but I must have looked like it. And he goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "It's supposed to be silver. It's supposed to be silver." I was probably 19 years old. And so he looks at the thing and goes, "Oh, we'll take care of it. We'll have it for you in 3 days." I said, "I'll be in Virginia and South Carolina and stuff in 3 days." So that made me want a silver trumpet so bad after that. So I've always had a silver trumpet. And I do have a gold trumpet too. I play Lawler trumpets, going back to that whole handmade thing. So, but I always like the King Silver Flare because it had gold inside the bell. So all my horns, when I have them made now, and I have a gold wash inside the bell. And so that's for me, that's it. And people go, "Charlie, do you find that the gold makes it gives it a little richer, warmer sound?" I go, "No, I did it because it looks cool. I don't know if it makes any." So I don't care about this stuff. I just like silver trumpets. Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
Uh-huh.
Right. Great. Next question. What's your favorite quote?
There was one from Richard Bach. It's about fear. I don't remember what it is, but it's I know it's about fear, that we make up fear, and we don't need to do that. So but I can't think of the actual wording, but it's from Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And it's about fear and how completely unnecessary and that we made it up. So yeah, your fear is yours, mine's mine, and they aren't real.
Okay. Good. Next question for you. You could be granted one superpower. What would you want it to be?
These are tough questions. One superpower, what would I want it to be? I would just like to not have to work out anymore. So what about just having optimum health all the time? So
Right.
that would, I don't know if that's a superpower. It certainly seems like one to me, based on the walking and the gym and the diet and all the stuff I have to do to have good health. So
Yeah, that would be a great one. All right. What aspect of trumpet playing do you find to be the most overrated?
I'm not sure I totally understand that, Jose. You mean like playing loud or something like that? You mean that?
Yeah. What thing do you think people focus on more or put more weight on than maybe needs to be?
Yeah, I have to say, based on all the students I've had, is range. I gotta get higher notes and stuff. So it's a big thing, and certainly I can show anybody how to play higher notes. How much work do you want to do it? I'd like to play higher notes, but I know how much work I'd have to do to be able to do it. And I'm not willing to invest my time in that. I'd rather invest my practice time in a lot of other things other than range. And then if you, just like an athlete, if we invest that time in range, as soon as you stop investing that time, the range goes away. So how bad do you want this? And everybody wants it, but then when you tell them what they got to do, they go, oh, all right, never mind. I'll work on my Herbert L. Clark tonguing instead, So something that's going to benefit you more than
mouthpiece. Yeah.
Say that again.
I'll buy a new mouthpiece. There.
Yeah.
All right. So, and the second part of that question is, what aspect of trumpet playing do you think is the most underrated?
Your sound, underrated. It's like, I when somebody plays something for me, I'll say, is that how you want to sound? Is that your best sound? Oh, no, maybe not. Or play it with your best sound, and they get a better sound. I said, okay, that first sound, you just practiced that. If you put this thing on your face and play something, you're practicing that. So you just practiced that mediocre sound instead of that beautiful sound you just did. Why don't you just practice the beautiful sound? So I don't think, our sound is our signature. When you hear Miles Davis, Chet Baker, Herb Alpert, Wayne Bergeron, you know who it is. In an instant, you know that sound. And so our sound is our signature. So you should be working on your sound. So somebody goes, oh, I know who that is. That's such and such, that's your sound. It's what are they going to say about you?
Cool. All right. You can go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
Geez, I've had such a great experience. I would think, I never had any teachers. So I got out of high school, joined the circus, playing second trumpet, learned everything I learned by just trying and failing or trying and succeeding. But I never had a teacher. The first professional lesson I ever had was when William Adam came to Orlando for a trumpet conference that was put on by John Almeida, who was great at organizing things like this, and also a great trumpet player and teacher. So Almeida brought Bill Adam to town, and you could pre-sign up for a lesson. So I got a lesson with him, and I was so excited because he's a legend, So I realized it's my first time I had a lesson from anybody other than my high school band director. So I wished I had taken more lessons, because I might have learned things quicker, faster. Same thing I was talking about, being more efficient. Why are you doing that, Charlie? Oh, I don't know. Oh, why don't you try this instead? I didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
more teachers, I think.
More teachers. All right. And you're going to give your younger self one piece of advice about life.
Oh, don't take it too seriously. You have to have fun. You know, we started playing music because it's fun. And that's another thing when I'm talking to professionals and stuff, and they're this and stressed about this and that and the other thing and complaining. I said, man, we started music because it was fun. And then we started getting paid to have fun. So make sure you're having fun. I've always said this when, you know, I'm 70 years old. And when I found out in 9th grade, people would give me money to play the trumpet. I thought, because I love playing trumpet and they'll give me money too. I'm going to ride this thing out and see how long I can play trumpet and keep getting money. So that's my life is very, very successful because of that attitude. And I encourage anybody, doesn't have to be trumpet players, whatever you love doing, find a way to get paid for it, and you'll have a happy life.
Absolutely. With you 100% on that. All right, Charlie, here's your final question. What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, it's pretty much what my reputation would be now. And I think that's when you show up to play, you want to be the best player you could be, so that everybody else around you wants to play well too, wants to be on that side of things. So I try to always do that. I try to always play the best of my ability, whatever that is. And hopefully that influences the people around me so that we all show up to do a great job, because that's when we're going to make the most music.
Yeah. All right. Well, very cool. Yeah. Nothing like being that inspiration, setting the model.
Well, I've sat next to people who were that for me. So if I can be that for somebody else, then I think that's something I can be really proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's more than music too. Regardless of whether you're a trumpet player or you're laying bricks somewhere. You can inspire people to bring their best game. So I love that, man. All right, so Charlie, man, this has been great. It's been great getting to know you. Everything that Tyler said about you was absolutely incorrect. You are a great person. No, this has been really fantastic, and I hope that one day, maybe next time I get down to Orlando, we can get together and continue our conversations over something that you're going to fix for me on the grill.
Well, I'd love that. I'd love all of that. Yeah. Maybe some duets in there too, someplace.
Oh, I wouldn't want to torture you like that, but no, seriously, man, I really appreciate it. And if you want to find out more about Charlie, definitely follow the links in the show notes to his website and to his YouTube channel. And he's got some great stuff going on. And I definitely suggest that you check out what Charlie's doing. And he's a good guy. So thanks for joining us for this episode of The Hang. And as always, folks, make sure you like, subscribe, share this with other people. If you have a suggestion for a future guest or a topic you'd like me to cover, hit me up and I'll do my best to get it happening. So until the next time, peace and slide grease. We out.
Thanks for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating deeper connections through our mutual love of music and the trumpet life. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and also like and share this episode with a friend. We want to see The Hang grow for show. Please support our sponsors and consider becoming a personal supporter of this podcast as well. Remember, for less than the price of a bottle of valve oil a month, you can keep this podcast moving smoothly. The Trumpet Guru's Hang is recorded at the Candy Factory, a co-working space and social club located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Jose Johnson is the executive producer. Post-production editing is by Mitch Bowers. Our opening theme song was composed and performed by Lexi Signor, and our closing theme music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. Incidental music is by Ethan Swayze and Jose Johnson. Graphic design by Ann Kirby of the Sweet Corps. The Trumpet Guru's Hang podcast is produced in collaboration with the So Good Lancaster Media Group.